What links an amusement park,
a convicted bank-robbing oligarch on the run in Moscow, people being paid to vote and protest, and a massive Russian disinformation campaign?
It's here, Moldova, a small country but with a huge election, one that won't just decide who forms the next government, but whether or not Moldova joins the EU or it becomes a backdoor to Europe for Vladimir Putin.
In this episode of The Foresight, we're going to show you how Russia is accused of interfering in the vote through an intricate web of cash, bribes and misinformation. But also why Moscow is so interested in this tiny nation and the reasons some in this divided country don't believe Russia is doing anything wrong and actually want closer relations with Putin's government.
And that's got the president of Moldova so worried that she's pulling out all the stops. She's already invited the leaders of Germany, Poland and France here to Chisinau to tell people that this country's future must be in the EU. And she's telling anyone who will listen that Russia is trying to stop that from happening by interfering in this election.
Early in September, President Sandu went to the European Parliament with a warning that if her democracy couldn't be protected, then no country in Europe was safe.
The Kremlin's goal is clear: to capture Moldova through the ballot box.
Moldova's government says Russia is trying to influence the election in 10 different ways.
There's a common theme here: Russian disinformation and Russian money, and it's been plaguing Moldova's democracy for years.
Back in 2023, a document titled Strategic Goals of the Russian Federation in the Republic of Moldova was leaked to a number of news outlets. It says that by 2025, Moscow aims to expand the electoral base of pro-Russian parties in Moldova, counter Moldova's cooperation with NATO, and create a sustainable network of legal, financial and charitable organisations friendly to Russia. And that work is clearly underway. During the 2024 presidential election and the referendum on joining the EU, Moldovan authorities reported that more than 130,000 voters were paid to back Sandu's opponent or vote against joining the EU. The Prime Minister claimed that Moscow spent more than $200 million trying to influence those votes, around 1% of Moldova's entire GDP. Then in May this year, the leader of one of the country's major regions was jailed for using Russian money to fund a political party. In August, reports said that Moldovans were offered $3,000 a month to camp out in the capital to protest the government. That's nearly 4 times the average monthly wage here. And in the weeks running up to the election, authorities seized more than $1 million, raided hundreds of locations, and detained more than 70 people they say were trained to destabilize the country before and after the election.
The pro-European government here says it's all part of a widespread campaign to get people to vote for political parties and candidates who will bring Moldova closer to Russia and away from the EU.
Natalia Zaharescu is a Moldovan journalist who helped expose part of this campaign. First, she infiltrated a group that used money from Russia to bribe voters and pay protesters during the 2024 EU referendum and presidential votes.
We saw how people were organized and how people were getting money from Russia, from a Russian bank, to vote how they were told from this network.
So they were using the money to either bribe people to vote a certain way or to attend protests.
Trying to create a network and to win these people loyalty because they were starting to paying like a monthly salary several months before elections.
Police carried out hundreds of raids linked to bribery during those votes, but that didn't slow down the pro-Russia operation. Just days after those elections, Natalia was invited to be involved in a different part of their campaign: social media disinformation. She was asked to promote a pro-Russia political group, the Victory Bloc. But it wasn't long until the operation evolved into a professional bot farm posting anti-EU propaganda, criticism of the president, and attacks on the ruling PAS party.
They started to say openly that we will pay you for your effort, and the payments are directly from Moscow.
They directly said the
Yes.
money's from Moscow.
Yeah.
But they're not saying vote for a certain person or party. They're just saying the EU is bad.
They don't need the majority in the parliament. They need just a small difference so the parliament would not be pro-European.
It was only 1% in the EU referendum, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just that little...
10,000 votes was the difference between no and yes.
While the money came from Russia, the operations Natalia and her colleagues exposed, and many more like it, lead back to one notorious figure in Moldova, Ilan Shaw. The son of a successful Moldovan businessman, Shaw made a fortune running the family company before branching out into multiple industries, including banking. In 2014, 3 major Moldovan banks, including the National Savings Bank run by Shaw, were defrauded in the biggest heist in Moldova's history. An estimated $1 billion, more than 10% of Moldova's GDP, went missing. The government stepped in to bail out the banks, leaving the country on the verge of bankruptcy. Shaw, along with leading politicians and other wealthy oligarchs, was charged for his involvement and placed under house arrest in May 2015. But despite facing criminal conviction, Shaw was elected mayor in the city of Orhei and then became a member of parliament in 2019.
He started splashing the cash on a lot of infrastructure projects in Moldova, including the building of amusement parks like this one, where every ride is completely free to go on, and yet it still feels weird and it's almost completely empty. And Ilan Shaw remained popular with some voters. That was even after he was convicted for his involvement in the biggest theft in Moldova's history.
Shaw tried to appeal, but instead his sentence was increased to 15 years. He never saw the inside of a prison cell, though. Shaw fled the country first to Israel and then moved to Moscow.
Since then, he spent millions on politics in Moldova, backing numerous politicians as well as political factions.
Shaw is widely seen as Putin's man in Moldova, and the authorities know it. After his Shaw party was banned by the courts in 2024, he formed the Victory Coalition, the same group Natalia's bot farm was initially promoting. And because of the links between Shaw and Russia, that coalition has also been banned from running by the Electoral Commission. The ban on politicians and parties with ties to Shaw and Moscow has angered some here in Moldova. We headed to a protest outside a prison in Chisinau, where political figures have been jailed for smuggling money from Russia to finance Shaw's political party. Though not everyone at the demonstration seemed that interested in the politics of it. It's at protests like this one that critics say people are being paid, something Shaw himself has admitted to doing. The people we spoke to said that wasn't happening here.
Нет, мы за протесты ничего не получаем, кроме как жизненно необходимой водички, которую дают ежедневно всем протестующим.
So when the government and the police say that people are being paid to protest and that they are being paid to vote, you don't believe them?
Нет, это неправда. Конечно, неправда.
Ситуация в республике такая, что нас вынуждают ходить и протестовать.
Нет, про деньги я не буду говорить, потому что всем платят. Даже партия ПАС платит деньги за то, чтобы за них голосовали.
Speaking at the rally is Andrei Popper. He can't stand as an MP because his party, Chance, which also has ties to Ilan Shaw, has also been banned. But that hasn't stopped him having a say in the election, posting TikTok videos that slam the government.
Court documents and the police say that you have links to Ilan Shaw, that there's evidence of money going into a Russian bank account you have to try and pay people to vote a certain way.
O mare parte din ceea ce spuneți dumneavoastră este un fake news creat de către partidul de guvernare vreau să subliniez, pentru a ponegri însuși toată opoziția, fiindcă
We spoke to a journalist who infiltrated an Ilan Shaw network, and she saw vote buying, the paying of protesters, and they were told that the money was coming from Russia. Do you just not believe all that?
Ilan Shaw, ca personalitate, este o personalitate foarte bună, a ajutat foarte mulți oameni.
So you know Ilan Shaw, and you say he's a good guy. So when he says that he will pay people to protest, is he? So he's lying.
Faptul că Ilan Shaw plătește pentru vot sau pentru protest nu este adevărat. PAS-ul a luat o metodă de a învinui Kremlinul pentru tot absolut.
Popper denies Shaw is doing anything illegal. And these people argue they're not paid protesters, just concerned citizens. But Shaw isn't the only figure involved in what the Moldovan government says is widespread criminal interference. Disinformation experts say the tens of millions of dollars the fugitive oligarch has allegedly spent paying for votes, protests, online disinformation, and directly to political parties is just a fraction of the broader campaign Russia is running.
The system is quite bigger, and it involves local parties, media, local influencers, opinion makers.
This is Andrei Kurararu. He's the co-founder of the think tank Watchdog, which tracks Russia's disinformation operation. And we wanted to understand how it works and just how widespread it's become.
So basically, it's bigger than ever before, and it's more sophisticated.
Technology is something that they rely on very heavily. More than half of the content that we see online with signs of different forms of disinformation. The person is going to have to do a lot of fact-checking, a lot of effort to see if that information is actually true.
Along with paying people to work in bot farms, Russia is allegedly posting fake news articles or videos that look like they come from legitimate news sites. This one looks like a celebrity gossip site in the United States. The story says Moldova's president has paid $400,000 to illegally buy sperm of celebrities like Elton John. It's obviously completely fabricated, and the website doesn't exist. Or fake videos will be posted, like this one claiming the president has a psychotropic drug problem. The video shows the logo of the American Psychological Association, a real organization, but the video is completely false. That video then gets picked up by a well-known Russian disinformation outlet and posted as a real story in multiple languages. Then there are the AI-generated videos and deepfakes, paid influencers, and church leaders reading scripts criticizing Paz and the EU. In this one, the priest says joining the European Union would mean Moldovans could only keep chickens as pets. Alongside the propaganda and the fake content, Russia spams fact-checkers and legitimate news outlets in Moldova and beyond to overwhelm those organizations and stop them identifying Russian disinformation. It's an elaborate and extensive network designed to undermine voter trust and shift opinion away from Europe and towards Russia.
Can the authorities keep up with what's going on, or is it impossible because it's just so widespread?
To give you an example, one network that is widely used for disinformation, Telegram, we have counted like almost manually for a week the number of posts, and it shows that more than 10,000 posts related to Moldova appear, 80% of which contain some type of misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. So basically,
in just 1 week?
In 1 day.
In 1 day?
In 1 day. Wow. So basically, nobody's gonna keep up with that.
Now, Russia has always denied interfering in Moldova's elections. They accuse Sandu and her government of stoking anti-Russian hysteria in order to win votes. Just days before the election, their foreign intelligence service said that the Paz government was planning to let NATO forces into the country to suppress any protests after polling day and turn Moldova into a dictatorship under the guise of European democracy.
So why is Russia so interested in Moldova? Well, it has to do with this nation's historical ties to the East and how that provides fertile ground for Russia and its campaign of hybrid warfare.
Moldova was once firmly part of Ruski Mir, the Russian world. The country was a socialist state within the Soviet Union. After its collapse in 1991, it became the Republic of Moldova. But a strip of land on the eastern side of the country, called Transnistria, refused to recognize the newly independent Moldova, and a civil war began. A ceasefire has been in place since 1992, with Transnistria a pro-Russian breakaway region ever since, with up to 1,500 Russian troops stationed there on a peacekeeping mission. Moldova was ruled by successive governments who worked closely with Russia, and in 2001 the Communist Party took power with 50% of the vote. They remained dominant until 2009, when young Moldovans stormed government buildings and clashed with police, demanding closer ties to Europe and an end to communist rule. Pro-European parties began to grow in size and support, and by 2014 Moldova had signed an association agreement with the EU, opening the door for Moldovan membership one day. The current Paz government won a landslide in 2021, making joining the EU a priority for the country. Now in opposition, the Communist Party joined with the Socialists and some other smaller parties to create the Patriotic Bloc, forming today's main opposition to Paz and the swing towards Europe.
So right now we're going south to a part of Moldova called Gagauzia. That is a region that's probably the most in favour of the opposition. In the referendum last year, 95% of people there voted against joining the EU. Most people there, they speak Russian and they want closer ties with Moscow.
And it's the region where Yevgenia Gutul was governor, right up until she was sentenced to 7 years in prison for taking Russian money to finance Elon Shaw's political party. Here, the people feel an affinity with Russia and they aren't scared of Moscow. They're angry at the Paz government.
Maia Sandu, первые 4 года, я ей так поверила, и я за нее голосовала. Людьми, что кому-то сказать, что я голосовала за нее.
Maia Sandu would say, if you don't vote for Paz, Moldova will become part of Russia.
Вы знаете, я не боюсь, если будет здесь Россия, потому что я жила во времена Советского Союза.
I asked people if they were receiving bribes or knew people being paid by Russia to back certain political parties. But they see money from Moscow not as a bad thing, simply help for Russian-speaking people in hard times.
Когда вы говорите, спросили о том, что Россия дает деньги, чтобы купить, ничего подобного. Россия уже тогда давала людям, нашим пенсионерам, помощь чтобы перезимовать.
Если кто-то хочет помогать пенсионерам, пусть помогают. Почему они не разрешают это делать?
The government says that Russia is interfering, they are bribing, misinformation. Do you see that? Are you worried about Russia?
Вы задали очень провокационный вопрос. Я не вижу открытого давления России на нас.
А руководство Молдовы, ПАС, они нас хотят втянуть в Европу против России. Молдова сегодня готовится к войне с Россией. Мы этого не хотим.
So talking to people here in Gagauzia, we're hearing a lot of the same things, that times are tough, that they don't fear Moscow, and that talk of bribes coming from Russia, that was actually money to help people. Now, whether or not you think that's what people genuinely believe, or that is just Russian talking points, here's the thing. We've been here for hours trying to talk to people about this election, and so many people wouldn't speak to us. And we asked them why, and they said because of fear, because of a lack of trust. And it's in that kind of environment that propaganda, misinformation works.
Back here in Chisinau, it's a different world. Everywhere you look, Moldovan flags fly alongside the European stars. And the PAS government wants nothing to do with Moscow, and neither do their supporters.
Aceasta este ultima șansă Moldovei de a exista ca stat suveran, ca stat independent.
Do you see a lot of Russian disinformation, propaganda on your phone?
Yes, a lot. In Telegram, in TikTok, in Instagram, in Facebook, in YouTube Shorts, everywhere.
So you're worried about this election?
Yes, very. It's scary for me.
Scary?
Yes, because if we don't win, if we lose in this election, we don't have future for country.
Ei vor fi numiți de Kremlin.
So PAS was only formed a decade ago, and they won the last parliamentary elections in a landslide, and then last year their president won re-election and they triumphed in the EU referendum. But that was a really, really close vote, and they're sounding the warnings once again here. Listening to these speeches, they're talking about Putin, they're talking about Russia, they're talking about Moscow. They're saying that this vote is the most important ever.
PAS clearly wants the election to be about Moldova's future in the EU. But a lot of people here are more worried about the cost of living. The economy has slowed in recent years, inflation is still high, and like countries across Europe, the cost of food and energy has soared since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Whether or not you think Moscow's sophisticated disinformation campaign or PAS's failures are more important in deciding the election, it's going to be close. In 2021, PAS won nearly 53% of the vote and held 61 of 101 seats in parliament. But in one poll recently, they had fallen into second place, behind the pro-Russian patriotic bloc. Now that poll doesn't account for the diaspora, Moldovans living outside of the country who can vote. 235,000 of them who voted in the referendum were overwhelmingly in favour of joining the European Union. In an election where nearly 1.5 million votes were cast, they helped secure a narrow win for the Yes campaign with a margin of less than 1%. They'll likely play an important role this time too. Maintaining control of the government is central to Moldova's EU project, and Russia knows it.
They don't need to push one particular party or one particular candidate. They just need to take as many votes away from PAS as possible, stop them getting a majority, stop Moldova joining the EU, and bring this country back into Russia's orbit.
Back at the PAS rally, we spoke to the Prime Minister, who's repeatedly warned that the Kremlin is pouring hundreds of millions of euros into Moldova to influence this race.
We have to have a majority, a pro-European majority in the parliament.
Do you worry, though, that this election might not be about Europe or Russia? It might be about the cost of living, the economy.
The Russian threat is real. Look, there are real concerns of the people about the cost of living, about the economic prospects. But the biggest problem is the malign interference of Russia in order to deter Moldova from its path, but also, very importantly, to use Moldova in the current geopolitical context, first of all, against Ukraine and against EU countries.
A fugitive oligarch funding political campaigns, protests and bizarre amusement parks in the middle of nowhere. A Russian disinformation campaign spreading across Moldova's social media. A crackdown against interference in democracy. And people facing real daily struggles in Europe's poorest economy. That's the backdrop here in Moldova.
It's a bit of an overused phrase to say that an election in Moldova is crucial or pivotal. We had that last year with the EU referendum and then the presidential race. So what makes this vote any more different? Well, As we've seen, Russia's campaign has got bigger and it's got more aggressive, and it seems to be working in a country that feels ever more divided. But I also think both sides feel that this is their last chance to win the argument, because they know that there aren't any more referendums coming up and there are no more elections until the end of the decade. And so what happens in September will determine the future of Moldova, possibly for good. Thank you so much for watching our latest episode of The Foresight, and in particular, thank you to the people in Moldova who made it possible. So that's all the people we spoke to on the streets of Gagauzia and Chisinau, as well as the two Andres, the Prime Minister, and Natalia. And also thank you to someone who was behind the scenes who made it all possible. That was our fixer, Valentin. Now, if you want to read more about some of that amazing journalism from Natalia, there are links to her articles below from her organisation. And if you want to find out more about Moldova's history, and it is quite complicated, you can watch our previous video all about Moldova.